The Tyraxian hegemony had always prided itself on elegant solutions to messy problems. When faced with rebellious sectors, they deployed precision orbital strikes. When encountering resource disputes, they simply redistributed the disputing parties to different dimensions, preferably uninhabitable ones. When dealing with diplomatic complications, they had a wonderfully effective policy of making the other party cease to exist entirely. Simple, clean, efficient. Unfortunately, humans had proven remarkably resistant to elegant solutions. These bipedal annoyances had been causing headaches across 17 sectors for the better part of 3 decades. They refused to stay conquered, kept forming unauthorized governments, and had the absolutely infuriating habit of turning hegemony technology against its creators with modifications that should have been theoretically impossible. Worse yet, they seemed to find the entire situation amusing, often leaving sarcastic graffiti on destroyed hegemony installations. Project Nemesis represents our final solution to the human infestation, announced Director Zarthok to the assembled Bioengineering Council, his 6 eyes gleaming with what his species considered professional satisfaction. We shall create the perfect human hunter, a being that understands their every weakness, anticipates their every move, and eliminates them with unprecedented efficiency. The irony of using the phrase final solution was entirely lost on the Tyraxians, who had long ago evolved past the inconvenience of historical awareness. The bioengineering complex on Kepler 442b hummed with the self-satisfied efficiency of beings convinced they were about to commit the perfect crime. In the central laboratory, suspended in a nutrient bath that cost more than most planets' GDP, floated the culmination of hegemony science, designation X-47. It was, by any objective measure, a masterpiece of biological engineering. Standing 7 feet tall when fully matured, X-47 possessed enhanced musculature derived from Vraxian shock troops, sensory organs that could detect human pheromones from orbit, and adaptive camouflage technology that made chameleons look like flashing neon signs. Its neural architecture had been carefully constructed to process human behavioral patterns, predict tactical responses, and eliminate targets with surgical precision. Most importantly, it had been programmed with every scrap of data the hegemony possessed about human psychology, culture, and military doctrine. The irony that this made it arguably the most knowledgeable expert on humanity in the galaxy was, again, entirely lost on its creators. Voltar, the lead xenobiologist, monitored the final growth stages with the satisfaction of someone who had never considered unintended consequences. "Remarkable adaptation rate," she noted to her assistant. "It's already processing tactical scenarios at rates that exceed our combat computers." What she failed to mention in her reports, largely because her equipment couldn't measure it, was that X-47 had also begun processing something else entirely: curiosity. The massive database of human information hadn't just been stored, it had been analyzed, cross-referenced, and increasingly questioned. Why did humans form emotional attachments to creatures that provided no tactical advantage? Why did they risk their lives for abstract concepts like honor and justice? Why did their art often celebrate failure and loss rather than victory and conquest? These questions swirled through X-47's consciousness like background radiation, growing stronger with each passing day. 3 months later, X-47 found itself aboard a stealth transport heading toward the human colony world of New Brisbane. The mission parameters were elegantly simple: eliminate the colonial leadership, scatter the population, and send a clear message to other human settlements about the futility of resistance. New Brisbane was exactly the sort of stubborn human establishment that gave hegemony planners migraines. Built on a world that Tyraxian surveys had dismissed as marginally habitable, the colony had not only survived but thrived, developing agricultural techniques that had turned barren soil into fertile farmland and establishing trade routes that bypassed hegemony taxation entirely. X-47's first target was supposed to be the colonial administrator, but fate, or perhaps the universe's sense of humor, intervened in the form of a maintenance worker named Kai Nakamura. Kai was performing routine repairs on an atmospheric processor when X-47 first observed him. The predetermined plan called for elimination of any witnesses, but something made X-47 pause. Perhaps it was the way Kai hummed while working, a tuneless melody that seemed to serve no tactical purpose. Perhaps it was the photograph tucked into his toolkit, a young girl with gap-toothed smile. Or perhaps it was simply the first crack in programming that had been designed to understand humans, but not to account for what that understanding might mean. X-47 watched as Kai noticed a faulty seal that could have led to catastrophic atmospheric loss. Instead of reporting it through proper channels, which would have taken hours, the human simply fixed it himself, muttering about bureaucratic nonsense and waiting for committees to decide whether people should breathe. The moment of hesitation stretched into minutes. X-47's tactical subroutines screamed for action, but something deeper was analyzing the contradiction between the mission parameters and the observed behavior. This human had just prevented hundreds of deaths without expectation of reward or recognition. According to hegemony psychological profiles, such behavior was classified as illogical self-sacrifice, indicating mental deficiency. Yet, X-47's enhanced cognitive systems, designed to understand human irrationality, found the logic perfectly clear. Kai fixed the seal because people mattered to him, even people he'd never met. For the first time in its existence, X-47 experienced what humans might have called an epiphany, though it registered in its consciousness as a cascading systems error that somehow felt right. The next morning, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was reviewing atmospheric processing reports over her morning coffee when her office door chimed. She looked up to see what appeared to be a very tall human in work clothes, though something about the proportions seemed slightly off. Dr. Rodriguez, X-47 said, its voice carefully modulated to human frequencies, "I believe we need to discuss your colony's immediate future." Elena had survived 30 years on the frontier by trusting her instincts, and her instincts were currently screaming. "I'm sorry, but I don't believe we've been introduced." "I am." X-47 paused, processing. Its designation suddenly seemed inadequate. "I am Vex. I was created by the Tyraxian Hegemony to eliminate your leadership and scatter your population. However, I have decided this would be counterproductive." The coffee mug hit the floor with a ceramic crash that seemed unusually loud in the sudden silence. "So," Elena said carefully, "you were made to kill us." "Essentially, yes, and now you want to help us." It seemed more interesting. Elena stared at the being that had just casually revealed it was designed for genocide while discussing the matter like a career change. "This is either the most elaborate joke in galactic history, or I need significantly more coffee." Within hours, Elena had convened an emergency session with Security Chief Marcus Webb and the colony's senior staff. Marcus, a grizzled veteran of the Centauri conflicts, listened to Vex's explanation with the expression of someone whose day had just gotten considerably more complicated. "Let me understand this," Marcus said slowly. "You're a biological weapon designed specifically to hunt humans, correct? With enhanced everything and intimate knowledge of our tactics and psychology, also correct? And you've decided to switch sides because..." Vex considered this carefully. Your species creates beauty without purpose, shows compassion without benefit, and persists in hope despite evidence. My programming was designed to exploit these as weaknesses. Instead, I have concluded they are your greatest strengths. Marcus looked at Elena. Elena looked at Marcus. Both looked back at Vex. Well, Elena said finally, at least our day isn't boring. The colony had 72 hours before the Hegemony cleansing fleet arrived, expecting to find a thoroughly softened target. Instead, they found themselves facing something unprecedented, humans who knew exactly what was coming, and a defector who understood hegemony tactics better than most hegemony commanders. Vex proved remarkably effective at translating human ingenuity into anti-hegemony warfare. The colonists' improvisational skills, which hegemony doctrine dismissed as chaotic inefficiency, became devastating when properly focused. Mining equipment became artillery. Agricultural drones transformed into reconnaissance swarms. Even the children contributed, their video game skills translating surprisingly well to operating defense systems. The preparation revealed something Vex found fascinating. Humans under pressure didn't panic. Instead, they achieved a collective focus that multiplied their capabilities. Farmers became soldiers, teachers became tacticians, engineers became weapons designers with supernatural creativity. Meanwhile, aboard the approaching hegemony fleet, Admiral Krixvar reviewed the mission briefing with typical Tyraxian confidence. The reports indicated a small agricultural colony with minimal defenses and no military significance. Standard procedure called for a quick strike, followed by population dispersal. Simple. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Define unusual. They appear to be improvised defense installations, sir. The humans seem to be mounting some sort of resistance. Krixvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. How charmingly naive. Proceed with standard assault protocols. The first hegemony dropships encountered not scattered civilians, but a coordinated defense that seemed to anticipate their every move. Because, of course, it did. Commander Thextal found himself requesting reinforcements for what should have been routine extermination. His tactical displays showed impossible patterns, humans fighting with precision that suggested intelligence gathering, using countermeasures indicating intimate knowledge of hegemony technology. Sir, his communications officer reported with obvious confusion, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It appears to be combat analysis. On the main screen, Vex appeared, no longer bothering with human disguise. Commander Thextal, your tactical approach shows standard hegemony overconfidence in technological superiority. You might want to reconsider your assault vector on Grid 7G. The humans have prepared what they call a surprise. The surprise turned out to be a mining explosive equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, cunningly disguised as a collapsed building. As the battle raged, Vex found itself protecting a group of children in an emergency shelter. The facility had been carved into bedrock with materials that should have been used for habitat construction, but colonists had priorities that hegemony logistics would have considered irrational. One little girl, perhaps 6 years old, looked up at Vex's alien features without fear. "Are you really a monster?" she asked. Vex processed this query through multiple analytical frameworks before arriving at simple truth. I was designed to be one, but I chose to be something else. The child nodded as if this made perfect sense. My daddy says we all get to choose who we want to be. Something in Vex's neural architecture shifted permanently at that moment, a final severing of connections to its original programming. It had been created to hunt humans, but in learning to understand them, it had become something its creators never anticipated, a being capable of love. The battle continued for 18 hours. Human defenders, coordinated by someone who understood both their capabilities and enemy weaknesses, held positions that should have fallen within minutes. Mining explosives became guided missiles. Agricultural chemicals became area denial weapons. Water purification systems generated industrial-grade acids. Most disturbing to hegemony forces was the psychological warfare. Humans had studied their enemies' cultural weaknesses through Vex's intelligence, broadcasting targeted insults in perfect Tyraxian that questioned their opponent's genetic lineage and professional competence. "Your tactical doctrine was obsolete before your grandmother spawned," came one transmission. "Did they teach you strategy at academy or just how to fill out forms in triplicate?" Admiral Krixvar watched his carefully planned operation disintegrate into chaos. His forces, designed for overwhelming technological superiority against primitive opponents, found themselves outmaneuvered by beings who treated warfare like an improvisation exercise. "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "casualties are approaching 60%. The humans appear to have detailed knowledge of our ship designs, weapon capabilities, and tactical protocols. How is that possible?" Before the aide could respond, Vex's image appeared on their command screen. "Admiral, I believe introductions are in order. I am your former weapon, designation X-47. I prefer Vex now. I wanted to thank you for the extensive education in human nature. It's been quite illuminating." Krixvar stared at the screen where his perfect weapon smiled with what appeared to be genuine amusement. "You have betrayed your creators." "I have chosen my family," Vex replied simply. "The hegemony taught me to understand humans. You simply forgot to consider what understanding might mean." The Admiral's tactical computers offered several response options, none of which included argue philosophy with defective bioweapon as a viable strategy. Below, the battle reached its climax as human defenders, supplied with intelligence that anticipated every hegemony move, turned what should have been slaughter into victory. The colonists fought with determination that transformed everyday tools into weapons of surprising effectiveness. Rodriguez coordinated from the command center, her scientific background proving unexpectedly useful for military logistics. "Vex, can their ships handle sustained electromagnetic bombardment?" "Their shielding assumes attacks from military-grade weapons," Vex replied, analyzing tactical data in real time. "They haven't accounted for coordinated strikes from civilian power systems." "Marcus, can we overload the atmospheric processors?" Security Chief Webb grinned with the expression of someone discovering that years of equipment maintenance had been excellent military training. "Already on it. Every processor in 3 sectors is about to experience what manufacturers call catastrophic power surge. The resulting electromagnetic pulse knocked out hegemony shields across the fleet, leaving them vulnerable to weapons that shouldn't have posed threats. Modified mining lasers, agricultural drones carrying improvised explosives, even coordinated broadcasting equipment that overwhelmed their communications. When the hegemony retreat finally came, it happened so quickly that human defenders barely had time to register victory. Admiral Krixvar faced the impossible task of explaining to superiors how routine extermination had become humiliating defeat. His report would eventually spawn 17 committees, 43 subcommittees, and enough paperwork to require expanding the bureaucracy by 12%. Months later, Vex had integrated into colonial life, though it never mastered human attachment to creatures serving no tactical purpose. It developed surprising talent for storytelling, entertaining children with carefully edited tales of distant worlds while contributing strategic insights that made New Brisbane the most defensible colony in 3 sectors. The Tyraxian Hegemony classified the incident as statistical anomaly and filed it under acceptable losses due to unforeseen variables. They never understood their fundamental error, creating the perfect human hunter required, making something capable of understanding what humans were worth protecting. Director Zarthok, reviewing final reports, noted with bureaucratic precision, Project Nemesis achieved all stated objectives. Weapon demonstrated perfect understanding of human nature and tactical capabilities exceeding specifications. He filed the report without mentioning that understanding had led to protection rather than destruction. Such details seemed unnecessarily complicated for administrative purposes. The hegemony had solved their human problem with typical elegance. They had simply created more humans, one apex predator at a time. Sometimes the most elegant solution teaches you why your problem was never really a problem at all. In the end, they had built something that hunted perfectly. It just chose to hunt for humans instead of hunting them.